Icons 8 Music. Icon.
Hi there. So it's been a few weeks since my last video, and in that video we just discussed a few sleep influencers that would be very useful for you to follow if you wanna get into better sleep habits. And in this video, I just want to quickly dive a bit deeper into one of the resources. A guy called the first influencer I mentioned was Matthew Walker. And I had a quick look at his interview with Joe Rogan, and I wanted to point out a few things which struck me from that interview. Firstly, I think it's a great interview, 2 hours of solid advice on everything to do with sleep, not just good sleep habits, but the importance of sleep and how it ties into things like diet, life quality, and how it relates to the other areas of one's life. So I'd highly recommend watching it in full. I skipped through bits of it, but some things that I watched that struck me and I wanted to mention. I think the starting point is that there's some great comments to the video which give you timestamps, and that's a great way to sort of summarize some of the key points from the video. So there's a comment by Super Olives 5 years ago, which gives a good range, gives some very useful timestamps. I can read out some of them. Men who sleep 5 to 6 hours will have a level of testosterone which is that of somebody who is 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep will age you by a decade. If you get 6 hours of sleep or less, your point of physical exhaustion can be up to 30% less. Top 4 actions to take to improve your sleep: regularity. 1 hour before sleeping, eliminate screens and reduce lighting. Have a cool room. Insufficient sleep is linked to cancer of the bowel, prostate, and breast. A short sleep equals a short life. So, a lot of this stuff ties in with what we discussed earlier, and we discussed in previous videos. It's clear that short sleep duration is correlated with bad health in general, shorter lifespan, and greater prevalence of disease. So, that should be clear. What I wanted to kind of add to those timestamps really, and talk about a few other things that struck me, especially about focusing on the time for getting to sleep. I.e., as mentioned in previous videos, like between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. getting to bed then has distinct advantages. And I think this guy Matthew Walker doesn't spend a lot of time talking about exactly when to get to sleep, but he does say some things which were potentially were useful in that regard. And the first one's at 54 minutes, so let's play this clip for you.
In fact, it's 3 hours delayed.
Wow.
It's 50 pump of heat that just evacuates from the body. Your core body temperature plummets. Temperature is at its lowest in the nadir of the night, 3 or 4 in the morning. And as that climate temperature starts to drop, that's when they start to get drowsy, as if temperature is just sort of signaling to the brain, now it's time to sleep. So light as well as temperature are 2 key triggers to help you get better sleep. If you look at those tribes, by the way, and when they go to sleep and they wake up, they go to sleep probably at 2 hours after dusk, sort of 8 to 9 in the evening, wake up about half an hour or even an hour before dawn. It's the rise in temperature rather than light that triggers their awakening.
Wow.
But there's a reason, have you ever thought about what the term midnight actually means? Middle of the night.
Right.
And that's what it should be for all of us. But in modernity, we've been dislocated from our natural rhythms. And now midnight has become the time when we think, I should check Facebook last time, I should send my last email.
Yeah.
That is not how we were, designed to sleep. And in fact, we may also be designed to sleep by Facebook.
Right. So that's a very interesting passage in my opinion. Firstly, he talks about how we've evolved. Our ancestors were used to sleeping just a few hours after dusk, and presumably that would be around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and waking up around 4 or 5 around the time of dawn, and that again ties in with an earlier sleep time, an earlier get to bed time, and then. I think something that might stick in my mind going forward is this point about the meaning of midnight. I hadn't appreciated midnight would actually mean middle of the night. So, I've always, as a lot of people, always kind of thought that midnight is when you should start thinking about getting to bed, or we ideally should be in bed and asleep. But the concept of midnight being the middle of the night just hadn't really occurred to me. So. And that's a useful little prompt, I think. Every time I think, I've got a few hours to midnight. Well, now I can think, actually it's a few hours till the middle of the night, so I should be in bed. It's half the night half your sleep should have been done by midnight. That's a great way of thinking about it, and I think a little trigger to help you get to bed a bit earlier. Well, he goes on to talk about sleep deprivation, napping. There's an interesting point at around 1 hour and 3 minutes about napping.
Epidemic.
I know from personal experience, when I'm tired, I always gravitate towards the worst choices. For me, it's
improve, your learning, your memory, your alertness, your concentration, especially your emotional regulation too. Sleep is critical for emotional first aid and mental health. However, you can't keep using naps to self-medicate sort of short sleep of, 4 or 5 hours each night. We know that the system itself, your brain, has no capacity to regain all of the sleep that it's lost. It will try to sleep back some of that debt. But what we've discovered, let's say I take you tonight, I deprive you of sleep, 8 hours lost. Then I give you all of the recovery sleep that you want on a second, third, or fourth night. You will sleep longer, but you will only get back maybe just 3 or 4 hours of that lost total 8. So sleep is not like the bank. You can't accumulate a debt and then hope to pay it off at the weekend.
That's a really good point. So we can't cheat on this. There's no substitute for regularity, getting to bed at the right time, sleeping for the right number of hours. We can't sort of have a few nights without sleep or with poor sleep and then hope to regain that, in the weekend or on a day where we feel like sleeping earlier. So that's another point that struck me as being very useful. And so we can no longer use that the possibility of naps during the day. So get out jail card. And finally, there's a section at the end with some sort of real bombshells that he drops right at the end. I'll play you 2 of these.
wow.
I could also speak about your cardiovascular system, though, and all it takes is 1 hour. Because there is a global experiment that's performed on 1.6 billion people across 70 countries twice a year, and it's called daylight savings time. Now, in the spring, when we lose an hour of sleep, we see a subsequent 24% increase in heart attacks.
What?
In the fall, in the autumn, when we gain an hour of sleep, there's a 21% decrease in heart attacks. So it's bidirectional.
Wow.
That's how fragile and vulnerable your body is to even just the smallest perturbation of sleep.
1 hour.
1 hour is
That's
all it takes.
insane.
Yeah.
Wow. You're blowing my fucking mind.
It's frightening. I mean, you can go even further, by the way.
Wow.
Insufficient sleep will even erode the very fabric of biological life itself, your DNA code. So in one study, they took a group of healthy adults and they limited them to 6 hours of sleep for 1 week. and they compared the profile of gene activity relative to when those same people were getting 8 hours of sleep. And there were two critical results. The first was that a sizable 711 genes were distorted in their activity caused by 1 week of 6 hours of sleep, which is highly relevant, by the way, because we know that many people are trying to survive on 6 hours of sleep during the week.
Wow.
The second,
No, please go.
I was going to say the second sort of perhaps more interesting result was that about half of those genes were actually increased in their activity. The other half were actually suppressed. Those genes that were switched off by 6 hours of sleep for 1 week were genes related to your immune response, many of them. So you become immune deficient. Those genes that were increased, or what we call overexpressed, were genes that were related to the promotion of tumors, genes that were related to long-term chronic inflammation within the body, and genes that were associated with stress and, as a consequence, cardiovascular disease.
This is
Couple of bombshells to end that. Well, it's not the end of the video, not the end of that interview by any means, but those couple of stats are shocking, really. That 1 hour of sleep less could cause that much more mortality, and also the fact that our very DNA could be altered by not enough sleep. The fact that there's that an immune system gets switched off, the cancer promoting genes get switched on, or the genes that correlate to disease get switched on. I mean, I guess that ties in with the rest of the interview, but just the way that was presented, and the starkness of the evidence that he talks about there is it's quite something. So I'm sure there's many other moments in that interview that would be impactful. As I say, please check out the timestamps in the comments. That's a great way to navigate through the interview in general. But I just wanted to add, quickly mention those 3 or 4 points that struck me in particular, and some of which that relate to what time you should get to sleep, as well as how long you should sleep for. Great. Well, I hope that's been of interest, and let's see if. I mean, once again this week I've been abroad and not sleeping well. Let's see if this interview makes a difference. Catch you next time.
Icons 8 Music. Icons 8 Music.